Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you guys again today. I'm Ezra Calvert with Entrada Insights on behalf of TTRA. Welcome. Today, we have the pleasure of having David Chestian with us today. He's the VP of Tourism at Epsilon. Many of you are aware of Epsilon and David with their expertise in digital marketing, demand generation, and customer identity match. Today, David is going to discuss why demand generation is the future of tourism marketing and how to use that concept to adjust to the new normal and excel your community towards recovery. Welcome, David. We are looking forward to what you're going to share with us. The mic is yours.
Thank you very much, Ezra, and thank you for TTRA for allowing us to present today. I'd like to start out a little bit of background about Epsilon Conversant, and we can move into how destinations do need to pivot from taking advantage of inherent travel demand to how do we create our own demand for our destinations to drive our best yielding customers. So first, a little background about Epsilon. So Epsilon's a 50-year-old company specializing a lot in direct mail, email, data, and has been a leader in the data space for many Fortune 1000 brands for a very long time. Recently acquired by Publicis, become really the core of Publicis' identity solution. So for us, when it comes to building any media strategy, whether you're a destination or a retail brand or a CPG brand, it really starts with the ability to identify a consumer. We're going to spend a lot of time today to get into the weeds a little bit about how do we build an identity solution and some things that destinations should be asking their partners about, how are they tackling identity? What we've learned, especially in the last few months, is not all visitors are valued necessarily the same for our local economies. Some people are not willing to travel, some others. So how do we figure out how to reach that right individual to get them to come and travel if they're open to it? So the way that we work with many brands, where we specialize, whether it's with Walgreens or Crate and Barrel or Coca-Cola or any of the other brands on the slide, is really business metrics. And I think business metrics are an important notion that tourism boards should begin to embrace. I know we've already looked at ROI, look at things like clicks and impressions and sometimes around reach, but the ability to really hone in on understanding what your actual direct media investment made to your local communities is important through your direct one-to-one digital media. So the way we operate with a lot of these brands is really three key pillars: acquiring new customers, so net new customers; retaining loyal customers, how do we make sure we get our loyal customers to buy more; and then taking advantage of hand raisers. Who are these low funnel folks who are raising their hands saying, I'm interested? How do we encourage them to shop, buy, purchase, spend more? And destinations, especially many of the ones we already work with, have really taken advantage of this shift to how do we treat our visitors like customers? Our destination is a product. It's a beautiful product. It has lots of sceneries. No one destination is exactly the same. But how do we start looking at our visitors as customers? So how do we acquire net new customers? How do we maintain our share of vacation to make sure our loyal customers keep coming back? And how do we identify those hand raisers that right now are willing to travel when so many others aren't? And how do we invite the right folks to our destination to keep our communities happy, to understand we're not applying any risk, and to making sure that we can all have a very profitable future? So today we're talking about is identifying high reach and high value customers. And we're going to give a little information to the travel market. So Epsilon actually has our own survey product. It's called Shopper's Voice. It's not just traveler specific. We actually interview a cross section of American consumers. So a lot across many things, whether it's going to be travel or retail purchases or buying purchases or political affiliation. This is all available on our website. We'll give to the end. We're going to spend some time doing a deep dive into some current travel trends as we've pulled at the beginning of the pandemic, at the midpoint, and then recently as of a few weeks ago. And then how do we take these learnings of identifying an individual, understanding our travel market as it is today, to create demand for our destinations? And then how do we measure and prove that DMO's impact on the community? What we all understand, I think we can all agree, working with destinations on this call today, is our communities understand that tourism is vital and valuable. Sometimes what gets lost in translation is the exact role that marketing organization played in that visitor journey. So let's spend some time today talking about how DMOs can prove everything we know, how valuable they are, that every marketing dollar was spent in a way to drive maximum ROI. We'll talk about a few of our current partners, some of the great things they're doing, and then hopefully have some questions. So why is identity so important? And I think for a lot of the folks on this call, you've started seeing the trade, you're seeing that the digital media landscape is changing. Google announced that cookies are going away on a lot of their devices. iOS has already done that. You can't place a cookie in a Safari browser. So the average person is tracked by all these disparate identity pieces. So how do we look at them as individuals? So the first step to any digital campaign is identifying the individual, not the mass brand segment. We'll talk about that in a second. So we understand individualized profiles. So who that person is, their decision delivery to that person. So it's not about just being on a particular website. Not every CNN reader, not every certain travel blog reader is the best person for your destination. It's about targeting that right individual on the mediums that matter to them to get them to drive an outcome. And then measurement. How do we measure our results? So how are you measuring your KPIs, your goals for your destination? So this is a very noisy slide, but it's a great visual for the current digital marketing landscape. You are a person, but a lot of digital media, even frankly any media, doesn't see you as an individual. They see you as a device ID. They see you as a cookie. They see you as a first name, last name, address. They see you as a Gmail, as a Hotmail, as a Facebook account, as a Twitter account, customer IDs, multiple addresses. So it's really, really fragmented. I mean, the average American has 3+ devices and 5+ emails. I mean, right now, today, you've probably checked your personal email, your work email. Maybe you're really getting bored and trying to clean up your email, your junk email. I mean, I still probably have some old hotmail.com account tied to some shady old MySpace account from like 2000, right? So we have all these pieces that are floating around out there, but they're fragments. And we're not fragmented people. I'm David, we have Ezra, we have folks on this call. What we do, we don't have these silos. If you want to interact, and what retail brands do and other brands out there, they interact with the individual. They serve you the right message on your iPhone. They serve you the right message in your email to try to bring you along that customer journey. And destinations should be able to harness that same power to drive the best possible visitors and customers for their destinations. So the first step is, how do we reconcile all this fragmentation into an identity platform? So to put this in a little visual, up the top row here, we have cookies. Bottom row, we have individuals. This is a blinded client we ran a few years ago. They said, we have a lot of data. We're going to give you our data to activate. They sent over almost 150 million cookies. We then deduped that to nearly 23 million individuals. So what that's saying is they have a browser cookie. They have a device ID cookie. They have different piece of information in their systems, but it's not to the individual. When you start thinking about marketing, what I think is really hard for the digital landscape is, how do we get just reach right? You see people quote, people say we have 400 million profiles in the United States. We have 1 billion profiles in the world. I always ask, let's quantify that to a population. As researchers, we know you cannot have more profiles than the population of the United States. So sometimes a gut check every now and then is good. And when you see those numbers, it's really talking about this first column, cookies, fragments. Yes, you probably have millions of pieces of code, but how many individuals are there? So an ID allows you to, number one, quantify your actual potential audience, allow you to identify your best people. And once you know that visitor consumer, you can then dedupe, have an actual conversation, and be able to track things across devices. So as you pull up Google Analytics, you'll probably see a lot on your website traffic, iOS devices, Android devices. You'll see, search traffic, social traffic, paid traffic. But what a lot of your Google Analytics settings are not telling you is this is one individual on 5 devices or 5 individuals on 5 devices. This is where identity can really help you understand the true value of your marketing efforts. So you need to create a single view of a traveler, and the way that we do it is we take all these online and offline informations, all your device behavior, your ID resolution, all within barriers of privacy, to understand who you are and decision creative and to target people to drive an outcome. So if you're a cruise line client we work with, it's to drive a booking. If you're an airline, it's to drive a ticket sale. If you're a CPG brand, it's we want you to buy the Clorox bleach inside the Publix. But if you're a destination, you can use the same ability to say, who is our best potential visitors? How do we find them? What do they look like? And how do we drive revenue for our stakeholders? So there are many ways to begin the identity resolution process. Different companies do it different ways. We do it a certain way, which we think is the best, but other people do things other ways as well. Probabilistic, deterministic are probably 2 words people on this call are pretty familiar with. If you cannot match devices together, it's impossible to have a truly robust identity solution. So step 1 of any type of building an identity for digital media is to match these devices. Take the iPhone, take the Android, take the tablet to one single ID. The first step of matching devices, probabilistic, which is what a lot of DSPs use. It's been the backbone since the early stages of cross-device media, is based on IP address. So it makes some assumptions that everybody in the same IP address, everybody in the same household, in the same VPN, in the same office, is related or similar people. Most people are starting to figure out how we do deterministic correctly. So we do deterministic, and so do a lot of your social media companies, your email companies. It's based off a hard match. So you log into a device, you log into another device, they match devices that way. There's a hybrid approach that'll use both. You'll see this, a lot of these companies are just about device matching only. They'll see IP address, they'll see some email. But again, the challenge a lot of this is it's still fragmented. It's based off of one email or one solution or one IP address. How do you bundle it all together? So we do it by deterministic plus verified by purchase. So we match your devices, and then we see the purchases you make at certain retailers, online and offline. We can verify that messaging that way. So it's all about being verified, and we can dig into that deeper after the questions. So now that we know, we can deterministically match a consumer to an online profile, the next steps are even more important. So we understand your devices now. So step 1, these devices are connected. Step 2 is to verify that profile and populate it with the offline data. So at Epsilon, as I mentioned earlier, a strong history of playing in the personally identifiable information space. One important thing to note on our side of the business, Epsilon Digital Media Solutions, no PII ever enters our walls. We are a completely non-PII environment. It's all about pseudo-anonymized name, address, and email. But we verify that, and we match this pseudo-anonymized information to verify these profiles. So we know where people live, how they interact, voting records, VIN numbers, where you go. It's all tied to these profiles. So we understand where you're shopping and who you are. We then add all your browsing data on your desktop for several months, almost a year of mobile information. And then for destinations, we do something very, very unique. And I think it's a massive value as you move forward into the future. Looking at things like visitor spend, travel intent, and first-party data you have. So creating custom audiences for your destination. We'll get into that a little more, but I would think we should move away as destination marketers from these broad audiences. You can almost guess for a beach destination during the spring break time who their target is, right? It's moms, 25, 54, household income, 100K plus that live in certain cities. Well, that's changed. With COVID, not every mom is willing to travel. Not every person has the means or the proclivity to get in a car or plane and go somewhere. So how do we understand who that right visitor is for a destination? So as we fuel these profiles, we say things like, who you actually are, what you're buying, what you like, where you go, how you interact, where you shop. And these are not fragments. Our machine learnings and our data sources aggregate this together. Our profiles are updated many times a day in real time to understand where you're going, what you're doing. We track 535 million plus devices across 200 million individuals to see everything about you. And then 200 million, just to quantify that, I think in terms of reach number, it's about 85% of the online targetable US internet audience. I think it's important as marketers understand what that universe looks like. So what's going on in travel? We spent some time talking about identity and why that's important and how we could apply that in some ways for destinations the same way that other brands do. But here's what we're seeing right now in the travel marketplace. 1 in 5 consumers still plan to travel this summer, and this is based on wave 3. So to mention a little bit earlier, we did wave 1, wave 2, wave 3 polls of when people are willing to travel. So there still is some folks interested in getting out there, but your typical hand-raising type actions, people browsing airline sites, travel blogs, they're not where they used to be. So there's still some demand here. We can also see, and this, for people here probably nodding their head, Generation Z is most eager to travel. And one thing to note, we spend a lot of time talking about identity. In order for visualization purposes, we can put individuals into cohorts based on generation, age, spend levels. So you can still target individuals at an audience level based on your insights. Then you'll know who that person is and not waste the money if they're not actually willing to travel. So we can see this Generation Z still willing to travel. When respondents feel safe booking a trip. So what's really interesting, and we're seeing that government direction is less of a signal for consumers to feel safe. So I see this as an opportunity for destinations to find the right people and assure folks on their own we're a safe place to come travel responsibly. We wish you come stay here. One of some of the folks we work with, like St. Pete, is doing a great job of talking about, hey, come travel responsibly, show up and travel responsibly. Other destinations do the same thing. How do we encourage visitors to come? Because we're not completely shut down, but act in a responsible way that makes our community feel safe. So we can figure out ways of destinations to market to folks to assure them we might be able to get some short-term demand. We can then also look at when people feel safe and what we can do. What I think is really interesting when you look at this graph as well is when you're thinking about an individual, when you look all the way at the end, you see that 26% say nothing will make me feel comfortable. 23% say we're not sure, we can't say. With limited marketing resources as destinations come out during recovery, we shouldn't spend any time spending any money to 50% of people who are unsure, right? That's not going to help drive demand. Maybe some long-term brand awareness when they're ready, but if we can understand when people are ready and what their opportunity is to travel, it can be really, really impactful. So let's start focusing attention on individuals who are willing. If you say, hey, you can wear a face mask here, we're wearing face masks, a certain percentage are willing to travel. You know, to pick and choose the people based on their willingness to get out can help destinations drive demand for short-term recovery to make sure restaurants are full, people are shopping, people are staying, and also to make sure that we can have long-term growth as well. This is interesting too. So part of the same shopper voice information we get to pull out, we can actually see spend. So here are states where we see spend is less than consumer spend in the US average and some that are more. So it's evident some of the current hotspots, right, that are in the news as we pull this out, and how it's affecting consumer spend lower than US average. But using spend information can also help you understand which states to reach, give an idea of when demand is coming back, because consumer spend, people's willingness to buy things, typically helps be a good indicator of when discretionary income might become available as well. So we understand when people are spending and where they're spending could be a good indicator of before people are hand raising and saying, hey, I want to travel again, that travel demand might be starting to swell. So how do we create destination demand? So it's about reaching your individuals. This is a theme I hope we picked up on so far, is how do we reach individuals at scale? So right now, these are two guys with varying hairstyles, but on a digital landscape, they're cookies. So right now, if you're a destination saying, well, if we want to target men that are 35, that are married, that have a household income 150K live in New York, they're the same person. You're targeting lots of the same individuals. But we know that's not the case. You can see more. This gentleman likes to go to the beach. He likes to golf. The other person likes to go skiing. He likes a deal. He likes to be outdoors. We can start, if we can't just personalize the creative, if the destination says, I don't have as many assets, you can at least make sure if you're a beach, you're not wasting your money on the ski person who hates to go to the beach. And if you're a mountain town, you don't waste your money on the guy who loves to go to the beach instead. Let's find the guy who wants to go skiing. If you're a hotel brand, we don't need to lead with a discount if this person is a full price payer. If you're a cruise brand, the same way. So people, I think a lot of times during recovery especially, really focus on discounts. But if you understand who the individual is and how they spend and how they behave, what they like, you can recoup, let's switch from our brands, recoup some dollars in terms of not wasting them with discounts you don't need. So help create demand by identifying those most willing to travel in anything you do. And then work with, we work a lot with our agency and destination clients on creative. So, talk to your internal creative strategy. How do we create more robust creative units, more interactivity, showcase things like wide open beaches or outdoor things to do in your destinations? You need to make sure you're aligning the right creative to that individual to get them to have demand. So we spent some time now talking about how we identify people, how we can help create some of that demand, the current landscape right now in the travel environment, and now talk about how we're going to measure the impact of that on your community. Because I think we all know that as hotels have been closed and as revenues have dried up, just like any other organization or business, destination looking at ways to find either one, alternative revenue streams. How do we look at other ways of generating revenue for our destinations, collecting a different type of tax base? You've seen some states and some destinations create things like percent sales taxes for tourism, getting a percentage of restaurant sales tax. Also, how do we prove everything we're doing in the community? So as our development starts to plateau, how do we find out where people are spending, how they're spending, and what they're looking, and ultimately prove that as a destination, we directly drove revenue. So we know we messaged this individual showed up, and here's what we saw them spend. So we can actually go ahead, I'll just kind of skip forward a little bit and talk about what are the things we can see. So with our ability to target individual, we messaged user ABC123 in Des Moines, Iowa on their iPhone. We then messaged that same individual again on their tablet, messaged them again on their iPhone, served them a video impression, and they showed up in another destination. What they're actually spending in marketing and spend and market we're capturing in these reports. So this is a report we can walk through to show you, but once you understand the terms of marketing investment, you can start calculating return on ad spend or ROI. So I know a lot of times as researchers and analysts, we go to our boards talking about clicks, and we're defending the clicks, and we're defending the impressions. We're trying to quantify this click's worth this much money here. But as we all know, not everybody that clicks spends money. Everybody that clicks actually travels. In fact, we see a lot of times when we place our first-party Epsilon clients' websites for destinations, a lot of your destination traffic is also locals trying to find information, which isn't a bad thing. Some of the folks that we know, like in Fort Worth, Mitch and Jessica and that team did a great job during the early days of this pandemic to promote restaurants. Let's keep restaurants open. So understanding your locals is also very important. But with this reporting, we're able to then see what's local spend, what is visitor spend, and be able to interact in really smart ways. So in this case, we saw this destination had a marketing investment of almost $240,000, and it drove a 79-to-1 return on investment in market. And that's measured across what we saw that person spend. So we have put together a multi-sourced data solution that really focuses on in-market credit card and debit card swipes. So that's where that gets pulled out of. So it's where people actually swipe their card. So for us, a visit is you swipe your card in market. For this destination, we reached 9.2 million people and about 21 million devices, but we deduped to 9.2 million individuals. And we got 27,000 to show up. We try to give a 90-day visitation window, but this all happened right prior to COVID. So essentially, people message in February or late January, didn't have an opportunity. We get them to show up in market. We can then see a conversion rate. And we've seen conversion rates be anywhere from 0.10, 0.15, up to 4 or 5% based on the destination. Bigger destinations, local traffic can help move this either way. But you have a conversion rate. And I think a conversion rate is a very exciting number to have for destinations. People to say, we messaged this universe, this many folks showed up, but with a conversion rate now, we can forecast. So now we know, how does this conversion rate change based on season and over time? How do I understand if I have a visitation goal of X, I know my conversion rate is only this much, how do I level set my goals? How do I go back and say, look, this goal might be unattainable based on what we see our conversion rate is. I need to invest this much money to drive the results required. And now you're able to take business metrics to our stakeholders and our boards and say, look, here's what we need to be successful. And here's what we can do with the budget we have. And another number we think is really important is the average message yield per visitor. So what this shows is we see 50 to 60% of all non-cash transactions that the user does. So in this case, it's not extrapolated. So we saw these 27,000 folks on average spend about $700 on their trip. And once we see yield, we can see how this yield changes based on season and over time. And then yield by category. So we all know our bread and butter is the hotel industry, right? We know they're very vital to our communities and to how we fund a lot of what we do, great work we do. So it's important to show hotel return. So for this campaign, the hotel return was 33-to-1. So for every dollar invested, all things else taken out, $33 came back to the hotel industry. It's a great return based on the actual swipes in market. We also saw retail had a great lift. Dine-in nightlife was also positive. Entertainment, recreation. Some of the things we get to see here too is local services will include things like paid parking, government managed attractions. So you're able to see where people are spending and what they're doing. Another thing you can look at is return by feeder market. So as you start looking at recovery and becoming much more personalized and strategic in who you're messaging, who you're inviting, how you're calculating return, there's also some markets that yield better than others. It's important to know, who over indexes in terms of spend. And as we take a regional approach to reopening and recovery in this country, which parts of the country can we invite back and when? And if our budgets are stretched thin, how do we invest in the right markets that will drive the most yield? Maybe New York, our budget just can't handle spot TV or cable buys up there this year. It's just too expensive. But if we really focus on Boston and we really focus on Philadelphia, we get pretty much the same return for half the investment. So now you can start calculating ROAS by feeder market, market ROAS, how much it costs for you to bring a person from this market versus somewhere else. And be very strategic in how you're serving not just digital media, but all media. So moving forward, again, how do we create demand? Well, a lot of it's about learning what we did and learning where people reside and understanding how we drive that return on investment. Other things to look at too are demographic breakout. So who actually spends and what they look like. So of that 27,000 folks that showed up, what do they look like? What's their net worth? What's their income? You're also able to dig down into revenue by gender, education level, and then by zip code. So I think this is very important as well, because, as we know, tourism and economic development are very closely tied hand in hand. It's really great to see if, we just built this great new downtown, multi-use development in this downtown area, that we see visitors actually spending money in that zip code where that area is, right? If we've seen a new attraction, we'll be able to start seeing how people move around. We can understand how visitors are impacting all aspects of our communities. What we see a lot of times is not only do you see your major hotel areas pop, we also see areas around outlet malls, major shopping venues, restaurant developments. So you can then go with your economic development partner and say, we need to build something here, or we've seen this work here. And how do we grow and prove to our community all the value we're unlocking, all the revenue we're generating, and how we're helping offset their tax burden? So demand generation is important, but you must start able to learn too how we're moving people around and be able to prove that you're directly driving that demand. So what we hope moving forward is that more destinations will really begin to embrace and have the tools to be able to do it, the same tactics that other corporations and businesses do. Because at the end of the day, the business of a destination marketing organization is to drive revenue for the destination and well-being for their community. And I think with the ability to help create demand with individuals, they'll have the tools to do that. So some tourism boards that we work with are doing a pretty good job. Visit Savannah, we worked with them, one of our first folks, 133 to 1 return for their campaign, 21 for hotels. Really unique, trying to drive folks to a coastal town. St. Pete Clearwater down in Florida, same way. This is an opportunity to drive, their drive and some of their fly markets to come there and see what they're actually spending. And as we move forward, we can pivot demand. So imagine a time where we have seasonal investments, but we know people still come to our destination in the wintertime. It's important to understand who comes to, you might have a wintry town, it might be really, really cold, but there's something for everybody, right? So how do we find those people to help make the valleys not so low and the peaks a little higher? So at the end, this is a few final thoughts, is take a deep dive to make sure the right strategy is in place, that you can have proactive accountability for every dollar invested. Recognize the importance of how it drives community impact and economic growth, and then maintain a competitive advantage. I've been at Epsilon now for about 8 years, and I've worked with many brands, many types of, from automotive to CPG, retail in between. I have been overwhelmed by the amount of collaboration and the genuine openness of this tourism and travel industry. Everybody wants to help people help and grow, but it's also important to keep in mind too, we want to help and grow, but we got to make sure our destination stays competitive. So understanding how to maintain your share of vacation, how to make sure you're just a little bit step ahead of the next beach town over or the next community over can really help you as you're trying to create demand. And then understand your consumer and start treating visitors like consumers. We want them to come with their hopes and their dreams and their plans and make their memories, but they're still providing transactions. They are consumers. And when they're there, they're our customers. And they're our customers who can invite back over and over and over again. Because what any CMO of any company will tell you, the best way to generate long-term revenue is to keep your current customers very, very happy. So let's go out and find our current customers, our current visitors, those who have visited the last year, the last 2 years, and welcome them back with open arms. So with that, I'd love to answer any questions. And also keep in mind, if you want some follow-up or deep dive, Howard and I will be presenting at the Marketing Outlook Forum. And a lot of our survey information is on epsilon.com. So if you haven't planned on attending the Marketing Outlook Forum, we would greatly recommend you do. Ezra, thank you so much for the time.
Wonderful, David. Since we have a couple minutes, I'll just ask you a couple questions. You talked about identity management and reaching out to the consumers from a demand generation perspective. How do you perceive tourism organizations in their journey in identity management?
That's a really good question. A lot of them are just starting out, and I don't think it's because of a lack of wanting to. I think it's been a lack of really having to have the need in the past, right? We can reach these generalized audiences. We know they come. We have a lot of sources that say they're spending and doing things. But I think now when you're trying to create demand, it's going to be more vital than ever. So I'm seeing a lot of destinations start to pivot this way. Just because with the Google Chrome updates, with the latest iOS device ID updates, now acquiring opt-in, traditional digital medias have a hard time scaling and adapting unless you have an identity solution in place. So destinations are understanding that long term they have to have some sort of either partner themselves with identity moving forward. So a lot of them in the early stages, but we've seen a few really embrace it and pivot very, very quickly to make sure they're poised to unlock the most value for their communities.
Pivot, it is. That's the area and the time that we are. And finally, what are some words of wisdom as a closing perspective to be future-proof with this post-cookie world and be more prepped up in demand generation, identity management, where marketing is headed to such a savvy position?
It's to build an identity solution requires investment. So words of advice would be reach out to partners, vendors, people in the space, CMOs of your local, flagship corporations in your markets. Ask them what's working for them and how they're doing it. And I think, understanding who you're wanting to identify with a goal in mind. So I think for destinations, the name of the game is proactive accountability. We're never sure the next question we're going to be asked, especially as we move towards recovery. And I think the more that destinations can prove that we may not be able to drive all tourism, but as a destination marketing organization, we understand the best and highest yielding and most valuable visitor. So our role is to really build value over volume. So where I think 2019 and looking back was all about, we want volume, we want people, we want heads and beds, butts and seats, let's get out there. I think 2020 and moving forward, at least in the near future, maybe long term, will be about the year of value. How did we unlock value and the most value and bring the most valuable visitors for our communities?
Oh, I love that for the closure. That was just perfect. 2020 and beyond are the years of value, and we are moving from this volume perspective to value and reaching to meaningful consumers, meaningful efforts, meaningful outcomes for destinations. So that was fantastic, David.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much for your time. I know you and Howard are going to be at the Marketing Outlook Forum in October. We are so looking forward to it. Many thanks for your time and dedication. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. See you soon.